In this video, we are going to talk about the topic of layers. Layers in Photoshop is a pretty expansive topic. You kind of really need to know how to make layers work to really be successful in Photoshop because it's a big part of it. So layers is kind of like the best way to describe layers is if you were working with clear sheets of paper and painting or drawing on them, and then if you could rearrange them and do certain things. And that's the perhaps most simplistic way of describing how layers essentially work. They work like old school animation mylar sheets that you can move around and paint on. So layers is found in the bottom left of the screen. If you do not see this particular panel for whatever reason, it should be there by default. But if you do not see it, you can always go to Windows, Layers, or hit the F7 key to activate layers. Now the default layer here always comes with something called a background. This is just a flattened layer, which is it's not really a layer. It's not movable like a layer is. It's a flat background. This is what you usually get when you create a file. Now, the reason this is because when computers were older, they couldn't, they didn't process with memory. This is just a different way of saving memory. It's not as important anymore, in my opinion, but you can definitely support lots and lots of layers now. But back when Photoshop first came out, this wasn't always the case. You were really pressing your memory with each layer you added. So this is the background layer. This is not cannot be moved around. However, you can convert it by just double clicking on it. So if I just double click on background here, and if you just click anywhere but the image and the word, just like clicking any of this big gray area here, double click, and it'll bring up basically a new layer selection, which will allow you to rename the layer. Now, I don't bother to go and name my layers right off the bat. It is important to name your layers at some point, but don't do it too soon because as we talk about here, you're going to be collapsing layers and merging them, and sometimes the names will get lost to one of the layers when you do this. So I'm just going to hit OK. So this layer is now layer 0 instead of background. What did that accomplish? Well, on the surface it didn't look like much, but now this is a layer instead of a background. And if I were to go and erase on this, what we would get actually is a different result. I'm going to hit the E key, echo key, E key for eraser. And I'm just going to come in here and erase some of this. And because it's now a layer and not a background, we will erase this and we'll get this checkered background. That checkered background in Photoshop denotes transparency. So this is now not really more of a solid white piece of paper. It's a mylar sheet that's painted, happens to be painted all white. And as I erase the white off of it, it becomes a transparent sheet of paper. Granted, a little hard to tell, but the checkered background's back there. And that, again, that denotes transparency. If I were to just do Control A, which is, again, the shortcut for select all, Control A, and hit the delete key or backspace key on your keyboard, I will erase everything. And now before, what this would do is it would kind of operate as a fill on others in previous lectures. But now that these are layers, it will actually operate as an erase. So if I hit backspace, it will erase everything. Everything's one big checker box. I'm going to Control D to deselect. And there we go. We have a transparent mylar sheet. Obviously, this is not exciting, but I'm just kind of building up to how we can use these. Now, some fun things you can do with this, just slightly different way things behave in Photoshop, is I've already used the marquee tool, M key, but we talked about this previously. M key, draw a marquee here. And I'm just going to fill this with a color, in this case, black. So I'm doing Shift backspace to fill, or if you want to, you can go up to, I believe under Edit, Fill. There's also Shift F5 as a quick key for fill. I'm big on my quick keys. Like I said, you're gonna want to learn your quick keys. It'll save you so much time down the road. But Shift backspace is one of those quick keys for fill. And again, when you do that, I default to foreground color myself. This is personal preference. If you are doing this from scratch or maybe the first time, it will want to do content aware. So usually, you make sure you just change it to foreground color, and all that means is it's going to pick the foreground color, which is these two swatches over here. The one in front is foreground, The one in back is background. So whatever one you wish to select. So I did a marquee tool here, Control M, drew out a marquee and filled it with black. Now and then deselected. Control D for deselect. Now what I can do now is, before in previous videos I showed you how to have something selected to move it around. In the move tool, we just hit the V key to switch to the move tool. But in layers, we don't necessarily need to have anything selected. If I still make selections on here, and I can still make those selections and then move those selections. But when you have layers, if you want to move the whole layer in this case the black square that's on the layer, I can do that. I can just go to move tool. Nothing is selected. I'm on the V. I hit the V key, just tapped it, and now I'm just clicking and holding, and I can drag this around. This is incredibly powerful and easy to work with when you work with transparency. Now, obviously, we want more than one layer. There's no point of having just one layer. Well, there's a little bit, but I mean, we take more advantage of having lots of layers, so we can really control how we do things. So we can create lots of layers different ways. You can click on this little plus button down here, and add a layer down here in the bottom corner. You can hit Control Shift N to create a layer. So Control Shift plus N creates a new layer, and then I'm just going to click OK. So I've created 2 layers now, and you can also go up through, of course, through the menus and go layer, new layer right there. I'm gonna avoid that one. And you can also click on these 3 lines over here and also get new layer. So there's 4 ways of creating layers. So I've created these 2 blank layers, and now you can see I have my original layer 0, and I have layer 1 and layer 2. There's two of the ways I created layers. And there's nothing on these layers. They are completely checkerbox, which means they are transparent with nothing on them. And you have to start being more mindful. This is a common mistake for beginners with Photoshop. So you have to be mindful of which layer you want to be on. So let's say I want to click on this layer, and I'm just going to go ahead and use the marquee again. I'm going to go ahead and hit Shift M to switch my marquee from the rectangular marquee to the elliptical marquee. And I'm just going to go ahead and draw a sphere on here just to change it up a bit. And I'm going to go ahead and also change the color, just so there's not the same color. So I'm going to click on this little box, or you can just use the color box window to change it. I'm going to click on the little color box, click OK, and then I'm going to fill this. Shift backspace, again, is my quick key of preference to do a fill. All right, and then I'm going to Control D to deselect. So now I have this cyan color circle here and this black square back here that are on different layers. And you can see I'm switching layers here, and I can move these around. One thing that is kind of cool in this newer versions of Photoshop, I'm not sure when they started, if you click on Control when you click on something, and again, you're on the Move tool, click on Control. Like right now, you can see I have the blue circle, the cyan circle here. If I hit Control and then click on this one, it will attempt to, and it does a pretty good job of this, auto select the layer that's on there. There is actually an auto select function. I don't use it. But if you hold on Control, it temporarily turns on that auto select, which I do like that. And in fact, I don't remember what the default is, to be completely honest, but up here is the auto select function. What this does is tries to automatically select the layer. Now I turn this off if it's on by default, and I just use Control to move things when you can. So again, if this was on, I could click on this blue circle, you try to grab it, click on this black box, it'll try to grab it. Turn this off, it won't do that. And that's generally the way I prefer to work it. I prefer to control it manually. Once things start getting really complicated, I find it better to have it not be on. But you can always temporarily turn it on by holding down Control, that's the way I like to do it. So you can see we can select these different layers and use the Move tool. We don't actually have to make selections to move them around. I'm just going to go over here to my last layer I created. I'm just going to go ahead and use the lasso tool, and I will go ahead and switch, hit L to go to the lasso tool, and Shift L to switch to just a different lasso tool. I'm going to go to the polygonal lasso tool, and I'm going to draw one more shape here. I'll draw something that's triangle-like. and then hit return. And there we go. There's my triangle-like shape, and I'll just pick a different color. Go with yellow, and there we go. One shape for each of these. Hit V key, vector key, to switch back to move tool. And again, I can move these around by clicking on the layers and moving these layers around. Now you can also change the layer of the order here. So for example, let's say I want this to be behind the blue circle. I can click and hold and drag on this layer and drag it down, and you can see where you get that blue line there. That means you're dragging in underneath, and then you can let go. So I'm clicking and holding and letting go, and now the blue circle is on top. So it always goes from top down. You know, whatever is on top of the stack here is the paper, in this case, the transparent paper that's on top. So you can sit here and move these things around as needed and change the order. Now, the beauty here is you can do all kinds of things to these individual layers, and then you can control them. In fact, we were just touching the surface here, but this is a great example of how to use these layers and really organize your stuff. Now I'm going to talk about a couple more things before we move on. I'm not going to talk about everything that layers has to offer because it's such a huge component of Photoshop, but there is a few things I do want to cover in the basics part of Photoshop. One good thing that you might need early on is this lock command. Like I said, I personally do not like auto select on, but maybe if you do have auto select on, maybe you might want to consider locking a layer. And you can just hover over the layer, select a layer, hover over the lock and click on it, and it'll lock that layer. I can no longer come in here and move this. You'll get a little warning that says this layer is locked. Or other things, you can't accidentally paint on it and things like that. So that's a great one. If you want to put that one in there, you still can move its order, but you can't edit the layer itself. So you can't mess with the layer, move it around or things like that. But you can rearrange the order of the layer if you chose to. The other things you can do, I'm going to unlock this, is I'm going to talk about this section right here. Hopefully you guys see my mouse where it says normal here. This is what's called the layer, the kind of layer it is. If there's all kinds of layer, I forget the term here, layer effects that you can do on this. Layer types. Normal is what it's normally, but there's a lot we can go into. Just this isn't the best example to try to showcase that stuff yet. So I'm going to skip past this, but over here with opacity, we can already make use of this. So we can actually tone down in a complete layer right off the bat. So we can come in here and just click on this little downward pointing chevron and just change these things to change the percentage. So I drag the slider back and forth. I can change the percentage and make the layer more transparent. And the great thing is it's non-destructive. So if you ever want to change your mind, you can go back and change it by just dragging the slider up. Now, if you flatten a layer or merge it, which I'm going to do here shortly, and you have an opacity on it, it will lock the opacity to whatever it currently is when you do that. So these next steps I talk about here, which is about merging or flattening images, you got to remember if you do that, that is a destructive process for a lot of things, not just opacity. So you have to be sure you want it to look like that. So for example, let's say if I have these layers, 2 layers here, and this is not a case where I would do this, but let's say we had 20, 30, 100 layers here. We want to start getting rid of a few of these. We can combine a few of these. Then we want to start merging some layers. And if I merge these layers by selecting them both, and again, generally selecting layers is a lot like selecting files on a computer. In this case, if I just select one and then select the other, hit shift, it'll do a whole row. You can also do control. It's almost exactly, I think in fact it is exactly, at least like Windows file selections. So it works the exact same way. But we select layers like those files. So you hold down shift to select multiple or control to select multiples that are not adjacent to each other. So we have both these layers selected. We can merge these. And again, if I do this, my yellow triangle, which is at 43% currently, will get locked. It will be merged at 43%. So you just got to be mindful of that. If you don't think you might want to do that, then what you could do is you could hide this and put it in another layer, which again, I'll come back to that in a second. But if we want to merge these, it's actually pretty easy. You select both the layers you want to merge, and the quick key is Control E, Or you can go to these little lines right here and go merge layers. Right here, merge layers. Or you can go up into the layers menu and do merge layers. So I come in here. See, I can't even find it. I use the quick keys so much I can't even find it. There it is right there. Merge layers. And again, I'm a big fan of my quick keys, so I just select those two and hit Control E or Command E if you're on a Mac to merge these. Now again, that's locked. So that percent, now that triangle is now locked at 43% of opacity. I can't go back and change it without doing undos. So you got to, again, be mindful. Now, if you're at all not sure, you want to maximum, maybe maximum thing. What I advise that you do is I'm going to go ahead and undo this. Maybe you should consider saving backups. And you can save backups a lot of different ways. Obviously, you can just save the file as a different file before you merge it and then save it as a file after you merge it. That's one great way of doing this. You can also save layers without changes in them. So for example, if I want to duplicate this layer, I can select this layer and go the lines and go duplicate layer. And now I have, hold on, let me take the screen. So now it says, what do you want to name this? I'm just going to say layer 2 copy. That's fine. Layer 2 copy is fine. Okay, and now I have 2 of these. Now what you can do is you can hide this one. And this little eyeball here is how you turn things on and off. So now if I go back and merge the 2 of these things together, I'm just going to assume I'm going to keep it, I'll be fine with the sphere. Merge these 2 things together. And for some reason, if I ever want to go back, I have this file that I can go back and maybe change its opacity and layer on top and do other things with it. So this is just making backups on this. That's all it is. If you don't want a layer, or this backup in this case, you can just select a layer and hit the delete button on your keyboard and it will delete a layer. So we can hide layers, we can merge them, we can do a lot of things actually. We can do so much to cover, but the basics here. We can move them around, we can draw on them, we do whatever we wish on drawing on them. And one other thing I consider a basic layer function is we can also put them into a group. So let's say I want to put these things here. Maybe this is just the start of something, and I don't want to merge these. Maybe I might change my mind later, but I do want them to be organized in a certain way. I can group these 2 layers together, and what you do is you select those layers in question and you hit Control G. Control G will group them, or you can go through once again the lines here, and I believe you can make a group. You have to make a group here. You can make a group. I just do, again, quick keys, Control G or Command G if you're on a Mac. And now what it does is creates a little folder icon. And what this is just a little, honestly, it's a lot like, file browsers where you have a folder and you put your layers in it. So it's the same idea. And thankfully, this thing has its own eyeball, so you can turn on all the layers in that group or off. And once you have multiples in here, I'm just going to copy this. You can use your V key just like the layers before. It just grabs the entire group, and you can use this downward pointing chevron to open or close those groups. So you can see I made a copy of the group real quick on a quick key. I guess I can show you how to do that. So here's a advanced way of, I find the advanced way of making duplicates. I don't even bother going in. I don't even use the menu. What you can do to duplicate any layer or group is you can hold down Alt and drag a little bit, and it'll create a copy of that layer or that group. That's a little advanced pro tip there. Comes in really handy. It's really fast. Anything that sheds seconds will shave minutes and hours off your work time over the course of over large projects. So I strongly urge you to try to incorporate a lot of these quick key shortcuts as best you can in your workflow as you go. So there we go. So we can see, we can make copies, we can delete them, we can manipulate the opacity of a group as well as a layer, the whole group as well as the layer. And we can really add this. Now, again, if you want to create a new group, Control Shift N. I'm just going to add one more layer here. I'm going to drag this to be below here. And I'll go ahead and, I don't know, make this some obnoxious color. And I'll do Shift Backspace for fill. Remember, that's the quick key for fill. Or you can go up to Edit, Fill, or Shift F5 is another quick key for fill. And I'm going to pick my foreground color. That's what color I picked. And there we go. So I put this so it wasn't transparent, so you can see it a little bit better, hopefully. Now I put these all in a group. Now this would be bad if I were to move the group now, and you get this kind of thing. What's happening is because I put that layer in a group, I don't want to move that layer. So I want to actually pull this out of that group. And what we would do is the same way we moved things in, move things around. If you want to add things later to a group that's already created or take things out, you just select a layer and you just left click and hold and drag it. Now what's not really that difficult, it's not really that difficult, but one thing you got to watch out for is where the lines are. In this case, it's really simple. If I just drag down enough, get those two blue lines, I'm dragging outside the group. So you can see these are indented. This is part of this group. If I wanted to create a new layer and say, oh, I want to add something to that group, come in here and I'll do a brush, pick another obnoxious color. Let's pick an orangey color. There we go, orange. I'll use a brush and say, use my brush tool, and I'll do, I don't know, I'll draw a star. Oh, it looks like I had some brush settings saved. That's okay. We'll talk about those later. But you can see I have a star here, and a really strange looking star. But if I move this around right now, the vector key, back to the V key, this is behind. I want it to be part of this group. I mean, yes, we could put it above it. So if I drag up, that's into the group. I kind of see like it's an encapsulating blue line. Keep going, double blue line, which means it's above. So it's above, there it is. But if I want it to be in the group, click and hold, drag encapsulating line into the group. And then once it's in there, technically you've done it before, but if you need to move around in the group, you can as well. So you can see it's now part of that group. Again, to get it out, in this case, all the way up, or where you get the double close blue lines in this case, will work. And then if you want to get it in, the encapsulated line like this. All right, so you can see we can move things around. We now have this shape in this group. I'm not sure what it is, but it's glorious, and it showed off our layers pretty well. So those are I would consider the basics. There's still a lot more we're going to talk about in layers as we when we start getting especially to the projects. But that's your introduction to layers. Give that a shot. Once you feel comfortable with that, move on to the next introduction video. And until then, take care.